Howdy do. Have you ever been bothered by a bully? When I was a little girl, it was a boy named Ted, who was big and mean and the only 9-year-old in town who had sideburns and all sorts of other growth usually considered man hair. It wasn't until I was older that I realized why bullies are bullies. It's because they're afraid. Afraid that they're not smart enough, afraid that they're not strong enough, afraid that they're not popular enough. And the only way that they can deal with their fear is by beating up on smaller kids. So the next time a bully starts to give you a hard time, you can tell him he's only acting like that because he's afraid. And you understand. Oh, and he'll still beat the stuffing out of you, but it might give you a chance to, get a stick or something. Anyway, now this story is about one clever little fellow who outsmarted the biggest bully around. It's the Three Little Pigs, but it's the longer, uncut version that you may not have heard before, sort of like Pigs 3, the director's cut. And it begins like this. Once upon a time, there was a mother sow who lived in an old barn with her 3 little pigs. Now, when the 3 little pigs were old enough to be on their own, she sent them out to seek their fortune. Now, the first little pig went off and met a man with a bundle of straw and said to him, "Please, man, give me that straw to build me a house." Which the man did, and the little pig built a house with it. Presently, along came a wolf who knocked on the door and said, little pig, let me come in." To which the pig answered, "No, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin." "Well, then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in," said the wolf. So he huffed and he puffed and he blew the house in. Well, the first little pig barely escaped the hungry wolf and ran as fast as he could back to the safety of the old barn and his mother sow. The second pig met a man with a bundle of sticks and said, "Please, Mr. Man, give me those sticks to build a house." Which the man did, and the pig built his house. Then along came the wolf and said, little pig, let me come in." "No, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin." "Well, then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." And so he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed, and at last he blew the house down. Well, the second little pig barely escaped the hungry wolf and ran as fast as he could back to the safety of the old barn and his mother sow. And although the sow was happy to see her little pig safe, she was disappointed that they had returned so soon after trying to make it on their own. Well, the third little pig met a man with a load of bricks and said, "Please, man, give me those bricks to build a house with." So the man gave him the bricks, and he built a strong, sturdy house with them. The wolf came, as he did to the other little pigs, and having just missed catching the first and the second little pigs, the wolf was by now very, very hungry. "I'll catch and eat up this third pig for sure," he declared. So the wolf said, little pig, let me come in." "No, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin." "Well, then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." Well, he huffed and he puffed and he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed, but he could not blow that strong brick house down. When he found that he could not, with all his huffing and puffing, blow the house down, he decided to trick the little pig. And so he said, "Little pig, I know where there's a nice field of turnips." "Where?" said the little pig. "Oh, in Mr. Smith's home field, and if you'll be ready tomorrow morning, I'll call for you and we'll go together and get some for dinner." "Oh, very well," said the little pig. I will be ready." "What time do you mean to go?" "Oh, at 6 o'clock. Well, the little pig got up at 5 and ran off on his own to get the turnips. The little pig worked fast and returned home with a big bag of turnips well before 6 o'clock. When the wolf came promptly at 6 o'clock, he said, "Little pig, are you ready?" "Ready?" asked the little pig. "I've been coming back again and got a nice big bag full. I'm cooking some now for my breakfast." The wolf felt very angry at this, but thought that he would get the little pig somehow or other. So he said, "Little pig, I know where there's a nice apple tree." "Where's the apple tree?" said the pig. "Down at Merry Garden," replied the wolf, And if you will not deceive me, I will come for you at 5 o'clock tomorrow, and we'll go together and get some apples." The little pig went to bed early that night and got up at 4 o'clock. The little pig bustled up and he went off for the apples, hoping to get back before the wolf came. But the wolf was learning, and he came early. At 4:30, just as he was coming down from the apple tree, the little pig saw the wolf coming, which, as you may suppose, frightened him very much. When the wolf came up, he said, "Little pig, what? Are you here before me? Are they nice apples?" "Yes, very," said the little pig. "These are the best apples I've ever tasted. You must try them. I'll throw one down for you." And he threw it as far as he could into a stream at the bottom of the hill. While the wolf ran hungrily after the apple and worked to fish it out of the stream, the little pig jumped down and ran home with a big bag of apples. When the wolf emerged from the stream, he saw that the little pig had left. Now the wolf was very angry, as well as being cold and wet. He was more determined than ever to catch the little pig and eat him up. The next day, the wolf came again and said to the little pig, "Little pig, there's a fair in town this afternoon. Will you go?" "Oh, yes," said the pig. "I will go. What time shall you be ready?" "At 3," said the wolf. So the little pig went off before the time, as usual, and got to the fair and had fun on the rides. At the fair, the little pig bought a butter churn and was on his way home when he saw the wolf coming. Then he could not tell what to do, so he got in the churn to hide, and in doing so turned it round, and it began to roll and rolled down the hill with the pig inside, which frightened the wolf so much that he ran home without going to the fair. The next day, the wolf went to the little pig's house and told him how frightened he had been by a great round thing which came down the hill past him. And then the little pig said, "Ha! I frightened you, didn't I? I had been to the fair and bought a butter churn, and when I saw you, I got into it and rolled it down the hill." Then the wolf was very angry indeed, and declared that he would eat up the little pig right that minute, even if he had to get down the chimney to catch him. When the little pig saw what he was about, he hung on the pot full of water and made up a blazing fire, and just as the wolf was coming down, he took off the cover of the pot, and in fell the wolf. And the third little pig put on the cover again in an instant, boiled him up, and ate him for supper with turnips and apples, and lived happily ever after. The end. Oh, hello. My grandfather used to tell me a joke. A man with a parrot on his head walked into a bar, and the bartender said, "What's your little friend's name?" And the parrot said, "Rah! Steve Mulrooney." Things aren't always what they seem, and that's why sometimes it can be hard to figure out what the right thing is to do. And that's what this story is about. It's the winner of my 2011 Be a Famous Writer contest in the 4 to 8-year-old category. And it's a great adventure about some of the most exciting things in the world, like treasure and pirates and books. And it's called The Treasure Decision, and it's by Sarah Smale from Washington State. The long, hot summer was nearly over. Rosie was bored stiff. "What can I do, Mom?" Rosie asked, starting to whine. "Well, why don't you go to the bookstore with your friends?" suggested her mom. "Great idea," replied Rosie. She called her friends Stephanie and Violet, and they had been wondering what to do too. At the bookstore, each girl went to a different section. Rosie went to look for stories about adventure, Stephanie ran to the mystery section, and Violet strolled to the animal section. 5 minutes later, Stephanie ran back exclaiming, "Well, I can't find anything interesting. How about you guys?" Rosie answered, "Well, I found a book about aliens coming to Earth." Violet spoke quietly and said, "Well, I found a book about explaining the breeds of horses." As Stephanie came out of the aisle, she stumbled on a book called A World of Treasure. "Oh my gosh, look at the book about pirate treasure." Rosie and Violet came rushing over to see the book. "Well, it's perfect. I'll buy it with my allowance," exclaimed Rosie. At Rosie's house, the three best friends pored over the book, learning all about pirates and their treasure. Violet pointed and said softly, "Hey, I found a map that looks just like Fish Island. See, that rock that looks like an eye and Fishtail Bay? Well, Fish Island is only a few miles away across the sea from here." And a handwritten note read, "For the brave and adventurous, you'll find great treasure." "Let's go," Stephanie said excitedly. "Let's ask our parents if we can all do a sleepover on the island. Rosie, could your parents bring us over on your boat?" Well, all the parents agreed that this was a fabulous idea, so Rosie's mom and dad packed the tent, clothes, and food. And 2 hours later, they were all headed towards Fish Island on the small but fast water skiing boat. Rosie bounced in her seat at the front of the boat as her fine long blonde hair blew everywhere in the wind. Violet was glad that she had short black hair and was wearing a warm purple sweater. And Stephanie was not used to boats and felt a little seasick. While Rosie's mom and dad pitched the tents, the three girls started their search for the treasure. It quickly became dark before they'd gone very far. "Well, we'd better go rest," suggested Rosie. "It's getting late." "You're right," said Violet. It was pitch black by the time they reached their tent, and they were exhausted with excitement for the next morning. Rosie awoke to the sound of twittering birds. The sun was starting to rise with a golden color. She woke Stephanie and Violet, who jumped out of their sleeping bags as quickly as possible. Stephanie's wavy red hair was very tangled, and she ran her fingers through it to get out the biggest knots. They said goodbye to Rosie's parents, grabbed muffins and a banana for breakfast on the go, and ran off in search of the treasure. The girls followed the clues written in backward handwriting in the margins of the book. The clues brought them past a beach full of small pointy shells, behind a roaring waterfall, above a valley filled with snakes lying on rocks, and through a dark forest. Finally, they found a fish picture spray-painted onto a small, coin-shaped stone with an eye. Stephanie and Rosie dug in the soil directly below the eye with their bare hands, while Violet read the directions to check that they were digging in the right spot. They found a red and gold treasure chest the size of a large tissue box. Rosie, Stephanie, and Violet were so happy that they did a little dance to celebrate. Inside the chest was a mix of paper money, gold coins, and glittering gems of many colors. There was also a note that read, "Do what you think is best. Take the treasure, telling no one, or call this number, 555-4367. It was signed Captain Red Cheeks. Stephanie shouted, "Let's take the treasure! We'll be rich, maybe even millionaires!" Violet squeaked, "Oh, we might get in trouble. Let's do nothing, not even phone." Rosie suggested leaving the treasure alone and talking with her parents. "Oh, I don't know, just one gem," pleaded Stephanie. But it might be a trap," Violet stammered. Rosie calmly insisted on talking to her parents first. Rosie's dad said, "You girls make your choice and we'll support you." After 15 minutes of arguing, quarreling, pleading, and discussing, they decided to leave the treasure alone and make the call. Stephanie called the number, and the three girls listened intently as the recorded voice said, "Thanks for choosing to call. Please return the book to the bookstore, and you will receive your reward." They couldn't wait to get back, and they hardly noticed the rough seas during the boat ride home. Well, as soon as the boat reached the dock, they threw off their life jackets and ran to the bookstore with their parents tagging along behind them. Rosie reached the store first. She was hot, and her face was red, but she didn't mind. Stephanie and Violet were close behind her, panting and out of breath. And Violet panted, "Slow down! I can hardly catch my breath." The air conditioning felt really good after their hot run as they waited for Rosie's parents to catch up. The manager smiled broadly as the girls handed over a world of treasure. She handed each of them a certificate with a picture of the treasure chest signed by Captain Redcheeks. She also gave them a beautiful ruby necklace in a cushioned gold box tied with a shiny pink ribbon. They beamed from ear to ear as they skipped out of the bookstore holding hands. "We certainly made the right choice," said Rosie enthusiastically. Stephanie and Violet agreed with nods of their heads, and the three best friends returned home feeling ecstatic. The end.